Hi everyone, it's William with the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary series, and I've got a short one for you today. It's just the final paragraph of the 22nd of April diary entry. So today I am here in the dining room of Hotel Schatzalp, formerly Sanatorium Schatzalp, and Dmitri certainly would have spent a lot of time in this room when he could, because it was a privilege to be in here. If you were a patient, you had to be doing well in order to be allowed to come and have meals in here. Oddly enough, he never talks about having breakfast in here, but he does talk about having both lunch and dinner, which he interprets rightly as a sign that he's making progress, that he's doing well with his physical health. So you can see there's this, it's not a very good look at it, but there's this very sort of pastoral mural on the wall, very calming and peaceful. And it's original to the house. It's been touched up just a little bit over the course of more than 100 years. But yeah, it's still the same. So for our recap, so the first two paragraphs of the 22nd April diary, Dmitri called a meeting, sort of an emergency meeting, or at least a sudden one, because of rumors that were spreading that he had given up doing anything serious and reverted to just enjoying himself, or just not doing anything. And he wanted to get on top of those rumors, but he did also want to make it clear that he was not engaging in a race for the throne, or a race to the throne, as he put it, with Kirill. So that was quite interesting. And then today we have a cast that includes not only the usual people at the moment being Maria and Gulia and Coco, but also an artist by the name of Nicholas Zarokilli. So we'll talk about him, and here we go. Around 12:30, I went to Maria's and had lunch there. Around 3 o'clock, I stopped by the Ritz to see Zarokilli. He really wanted to work on the portrait of me that he had undertaken last year, and which was so unsuccessful back then. I had tea with Coco at the Ritz. I dined with Maria and Gulia at the Crisovolonis, and then we went to see the Bat. The show was very successful and beautiful. I dropped by the club for a minute, so I didn't get home until around 12:30. So that's it. It's that short, but very interesting. So who was Nicola Panayoti Zarokilli? Well, Dmitri spells his name wrong. And so it took me a very long time to figure out who he was. You know, he was an artist who was quite well known in his day, but nowadays it doesn't ring a bell, for me at least. So Dmitri was spelling it, I think, Z-A-R-A or I-K-I-L-L-I, and actually it should be Z-A-R-O-K-I-L-L-I. And a lot of times, as you know, if you put something into a search engine and it's spelled wrong, the search engine will pick up on that. But in this instance, it did not. So I'm really happy to now know who this man was. He was in his early 40s at this time. He had been born in Turkey, but he was of Greek extraction. And he was a cover artist for American magazines like the Saturday Evening Post and McCall's. I think that's a ladies' magazine. And he was known for doing these covers of beautiful women for these various magazines. And then he was sent to France after the First World War, to be an artist covering the Versailles Conference. And he sort of went from that to being an artist who was doing portraits of famous people, aristocrats, socialites, royalty, and if you put in his name online, you will find lots of examples of his portraits of various people, and if you ask me, they're not good. I came across several that purported to be portraits of Felix Yusupov, two that purported to be portraits of Grand Duke Andrei, and I simply would not, unless the name was attached, I would not have realized in either case that they were portraits of Yusupov, and especially portraits of Andrei, because the likeness is not at all good. There's also one of Maria that I did recognize as being her, but it's also not a very good likeness. I couldn't find this one of Dmitri. I do remember in the 1920 diaries him talking about sitting for a portrait with Zarokilli and not liking the way it had come out. So apparently he, unlike these others, was willing to exercise a little quality control. So, you know, it actually could even be that one of the portraits of Felix Yusupov is misidentified and could be Dmitri. Not that it particularly looks like Dmitri, but it doesn't particularly look like Felix Yusupov either. So in my opinion, he should have stuck to these lovely ladies for the covers of magazines. But yeah, if any of you can find the one of Dmitri, let me know, please. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember. Maybe in one of the upcoming diary entries, we'll find out from Dmitri himself if the portrait ever was acceptable to him. I don't think Zarokilli was. I'm not sure. I shouldn't say no, but I'm not sure that he was doing these portraits for the people who are shown in the portraits, or whether he was just getting their willingness to sit because he was a prestigious person, God knows why, to have a portrait done by, but the portrait remained his own property. That I don't know. So we have Coco and tea with Coco as usual at the Ritz where she was living. And so Dmitri is seeing her every day. He's just not really having anything to say about it or spending a lot of time with her. So their relationship seems to continue to be on this sort of uninspired basis. But on the other hand, of all the women who are featured in the diaries, there are, including some that he did have passionate love affairs with. It's definitely a steadier relationship with Coco. I mean, just the fact that he is seeing her every day. And I can't remember that being the case with many of the other women or for very long, with the exception of Lucia Marling. But there was an added dimension to that relationship where he was sort of also part of the family. So that was a little different. Okay, he's starting again to go back to his club, which was the Travelers Club, just like in pre-revolutionary Russia. Before and during the war, he spent a lot of his free time at the yacht club. So this is the Dmitri of whom it could justly be said, well, he's not doing anything. He may not be out there being living the high life, but he's sort of wasting his time at the club. Yeah, I don't know. He often says that he just drops by for a minute, and that's what he says in this instance too. And I believe him. I believe when he says that he's not going and spending the whole evening there. And in fact, he didn't have time to go spend the whole evening there because he'd gone to the theater before stopping by the club. And what did he go and see? Well, his favorite show in Paris at that time, he'd already seen it. This is maybe the fourth or fifth time, and he'd pretty much taken everyone he knew to it. And it was a traditional Moscow review called The Bat, or if you want to look it up online, you can find music and you can find art for the backdrops and the sets and the costumes, and they're beautiful. But if you put in just The Bat, you're not going to get very far. So in French, it was called La Chauve-souris, and I don't pronounce that well, but it's the French word for the bat. So if you put that in, and put in a few of the details you know about Paris 1921, then you'll make your way to it, and you can listen to some of the music. And I agree with Dmitri, it's a beautiful production if you see the costumes and that sort of thing and hear the music. I wish somebody would restage it in Paris. I don't know if I'd go to it 4 or 5 times, but I'd like to see it at least once. And apparently it didn't make Dmitri sad. So many things that reminded him of Russia, whether it was snow or the waltz, the balalaika waltz that he had loved in Russia. So many of those things really made him depressed, but this seemed to have boosted his spirits. So this time he's going with Maria and the Crucivellonis. I think they'd all already seen it. But anyway, he got home around 12:30. Yeah, not so late. And what do we have next time? Well, next time we are going to encounter one of Dmitri's weaknesses that caused him to lose money. Gambling being the one on the one hand, not really extravagance, but, he hadn't, for instance, gone out and bought a car, which he could have used every penny he got to go out and buy a fancy car, a Rolls Royce like Coco, and he wasn't doing things like that. But he squandered a lot of money on his gambling. That was something he wasn't completely in control of. And the other thing was that he was always looking to go into business, and for a business that he could get in on at the beginning, or a good investment, and he wasn't wise about those things. He was a very smart guy, but when it came to business issues, he was very, very naive, and it seems to have turned off the intelligent part of his brain and reverted to some really naive level, which is interesting because he was so smart in most other ways, but with that, it was always a danger for him. So we're going to encounter one of those instances. So come back for that. I see I've managed to talk quite a long time, even though this was such a short diary entry. But, I guess it is what it is, and I hopefully will see you next time. Bye.